candidate Donald Trump has spent a lot of time this week laying out his economic vision. On Monday, he gave a speech in Detroit where he laid out his plan for revitalizing the working and middle class by bringing jobs back, striking a somewhat populist tone. However, that speech followed the release of a list of his 13 economic advisors, the people that will reportedly help him craft policies on the economy going forward. Many CEO bigwigs, hedge fund managers, billionaires are on the list. And some say it kind of confuses Trump's message on the economy. For more insight on that, I spoke to a former presidential candidate himself, Ron Paul. He ran for president in 1988, 2008, and 2012. He's a former congressman and now host of the Ron Paul Liberty Report. Here's what he had to say.
I don't think they can make a whole lot out of it. I think they would be confused if they tried to be specific in understanding what he's doing. But, you know, hedge fund managers are going to have an interest. They certainly aren't going to argue my position that we need less Federal Reserve intervention. They like the idea that there's a plunge protection team and that they can play these games of print more money and the stocks go up and the bonds go up and this sort of thing. So I think that it looks like they're going to do that. I think the tax issue, we might be able to give him a little more credit when he starts talking about, you know, the taxes. I especially thought it was good if he could get it passed. That's the other question, and that is getting the corporate rate down to 15%. Now, that would be magnificent if he could, but the odds of that happening, I think, are very slim.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, I mean, do you think that's an empty promise when Donald Trump talks about cutting taxes? He did spend an awful lot of time on that in his speech. I mean, can any Republican presidential candidate really deliver on that?
Well, no politician by themselves can deliver on it. A president, you know, can lead and hopefully get things passed, but he can't do this all by himself. And I think that if we look at this in context of a campaign, it's good campaign rhetoric. You know, it even gets my attention. Oh, boy, this would be good if it could only be passed. But I don't think anybody can depend on it. But the other thing I don't like about the inconsistency here is that if you really, really want to cut taxes, you ought to at least consider cutting spending. But I don't hear a whole lot of that from either of the candidates. You know, Hillary wants to spend a lot of money on infrastructure, which is not a bad idea if it's done in a proper manner. But Trump outdid her. He wants to about double the amount on the infrastructure. And he doesn't say, like I have said over the years, what we need is a little less militarism. We don't need to be running an empire and having troops around the world. We need to bring troops home. He wants to massively increase, claiming that we're way behind. He wants to rebuild the military at the same time, lower taxes. It doesn't add up economically, and who knows that even if they did try, there are economic laws that eventually bring these things down, you know, such as, you know, an unsustainable deficit and the markets just reject it. So I think the inconsistency that most politicians have by pandering to special interest groups, whether it's the hedge funds operators or whether it's for the people who want lower taxes or whatever, or go into the issue of protectionism. This is all done, you know, for political grandstanding, and I don't think people should take much stock in it. Especially, you know, I think it's the same way with the platforms that the parties write. Nobody even looks at them after they're written, so they're empty promises too often. And
you talk about panning to certain interest groups. Let me just ask you, I mean, Donald Trump does like to paint Hillary Clinton as the candidate of corporatism, but which of these candidates do you think would really be tougher on Wall Street at the end of the day?
Well, if you look carefully, you know, Hillary would like to think that, but, you know, her connection to Wall Street is probably every bit as strong, if not stronger, than Trump's. And, I mean, she has traditionally raised a lot of money from Wall Street, so I don't think you could trust a thing that she tells you about if she's against corporatism. You know, Sanders had a little more credibility when he talked about that, but she doesn't have any credibility there. And Trump is an unknown, so you can't say I know exactly what he's going to do, because I'm not sure he knows exactly what he's going to do or what his position will be tomorrow and the next day.
Right. It's a question mark for sure. I want to delve a little bit deeper, you know, on the issue of protectionism, actually. I mean, one of the issues that seems to be a constant theme in every Trump speech is his criticism of trade deals, of our trading partners, namely China. Trump has accused China of illegally subsidizing exports, manipulating its currency, stealing intellectual property. I want to get your thoughts on those criticisms, because it really has become the center focus of his campaign. I mean, it's rare to hear a candidate go after a country the way he has gone after China. Are his criticisms well-founded?
No, there's always partial truths in some of these charges, but I think the way he goes about it is absolutely negative. I mean, he strongly endorses increasing tariffs. Just 2 months ago, we put a 500% increase on the tariff of steel coming from China. And China is the biggest steel maker in the world, and they produce more than half the steel in the world because they have good steel and it's cheap. So we're going to put a huge tariff on that. Not only would our country suffer, but anybody who puts a tariff on makes the prices go up, which affects the consumers. So he's into that, and but we do already live in an age of protectionism. They pretend that free trade is going on and the WTO does this, but there are like thousands of types of tariffs on individual items that we participate in. But to do this bashing of other countries and not looking to ourselves, I think, is the wrong way to go.
Yeah.
Because you know, we do a lot of manipulating too, and we have tremendous privilege because we're dealing with the reserve currency of the world, so we have license to do a lot more than anything that the other countries can do.
Yeah, and it does seem like it would make it awfully difficult for him, if and when he does become president, to diplomatically deal with these countries that he's talking about. But as I mentioned, this has become the center of his plan, and he is saying that, you know, renegotiating trade deals alone could return millions of jobs to the U.S. Do you buy that argument, or the argument more generally that blocking trade agreements like the TPP, for example, can save us jobs?
Well, one thing for sure, it's a good political move for him because the country's hurting, but it's not hurting for those reasons. But he can pander to them, and people say, yeah, he's going to bring the jobs back. There's no way he can bring millions and millions of jobs back by demanding that we're going to renegotiate NAFTA and have the pipeline come in. I mean, those are good ideas. I would support some of that. But when it comes to bashing and raising tariffs and blaming everybody else for the problem, it's not good diplomacy. And if we get into trouble, which I expect we will, you know, militarily and financially, we might not be in the driver's seat forever. You know, all of a sudden our fortunes can be changed, and there'll be a lot of countries that resent this type of an attitude that we are the military power and we can do what we want, but we also have the financial power because we have the dollar, and therefore we can put on sanctions and we can freeze assets and we can control the international organizations like the IMF. I think there'll be a lot of resentments, and then there could be retaliation against us, such as you know, the debt that foreigners hold, in particular China. It's not in their interest to mess around with that now, but you know, if things got really rocky and we became too aggressive with them, I think they have an ability to retaliate against us.
That was Congressman Ron Paul. All right, when we come back, we're talking about